shroud of COVID-19 descends over the island, a vision of Jamaica's future in tourism, agriculture, and a variety of other industries may have become clouded. However, amidst the gloom, the outline of a future technologically driven educational environment is starting to become apparent, with thousands of school children and university students forced to complete courses online following the closure of schools. To discuss the potential impact and the future of education, we are joined by Dr. Luz Longsworth, Pro-Vice Chancellor and Principal of the UWI Open Campus, and education entrepreneur Gordon Swaby, who is founder and CEO of social learning services edufocal.com. Before our discussion, let's hear from the public.
I definitely believe that online learning due to the coronavirus stands to improve the quality of education for Jamaicans. What is also true, though, is that a lot of schools still don't have computer labs, especially in the more remote areas and at the primary level. So a lot of these students are not being taught the computer technology. So I do hope that this pandemic also brings awareness to that and the shortfalls in our education system and inspires change, inspires us to increase our technology, increase our learning, and definitely increase the potential of our students.
Good evening, Dr. Longsworth. I wanted to start with you and to ask you about your own environment that you're working with, the University of the West Indies, and I know from working there myself that classes go online on the 14th of April. How is the UWI coping with this new environment created by COVID-19? Dr. Longsworth? Gordon, are you hearing? Right. Well, I know, for example, myself working at UWI, that students in residence, I'm the manager of Mary Seacole Hall, were required to move off campus this week and into next week because they will be going fully online come the 14th of April. So what I've heard is over the last, since school was dismissed, classes were dismissed at UWI, lecturers have been trained to now go on the UWI online platforms to deliver their courses across all faculties.
So do we know how long that will be for that period?
Well, I know the semester has been extended until the end of May, I think, and exams will also be
online?
Online. Or well, you know, I have a niece-in-law who told me that she is going to be doing her exams in open book, and they've communicated to them already what the format will be. And I'm sure you would have heard so many people talk about having to engage their children online. Even my granddaughter, who is 4, does classes online with her mother, you know.
But I wonder, what about those children that do not have access to technology? How are they, what happens to them?
There's a huge conversation that is emerging as well, Leanne, about the digital divide.
Right.
And how the digital divide is lining up around socioeconomic realities. That there are some people who do not have access to the internet. And some of my own students who are at UWI have said to me, you know, I do not have a computer, I don't have
so how can they sit the exams?
Right,
what happens
and we don't have access
for them?
Exactly.
Right.
So I think that's one of the conversations that we need to have with our guests this evening, in terms of how do those who do not have access get access and continue their education.
Or if they don't get access, what happens to them? Is it that they can then sit the exams on a later date? You know, what's in place for those students?
That's true. Well, so, I mean, a couple of my students have asked me about taking a leave of absence because they live in very rural spaces and they do not have access to the kind of equipment that will make them access the technology. So, and then going to the library is not good, where some libraries have access to the internet and have computers that people can use. But of course, we know that that's not going to happen now, because they have to stay out of public spaces. So we are going to take a break, and when we come back, we will join our guests as we have this conversation about the new drive to get students to continue studying online. Welcome back to our panel discussion, and we have online our guests, Dr. Luz Longsworth, who is the principal of the UWI Open Campus and principal of EduFocal Jamaica, Gordon Swaby. And Dr. Longsworth, we start with you. Because I'm familiar with you, I wanted you to explain that process of the UWI going fully online on April 14 to deal with the thousands of students who now have to come to terms with education in a COVID-19 reality.
Yes, well, thank you so much for having me, and we see the little technical glitches that we all have to deal with when we're moving into a technology-enabled environment, but we overcome. Yes, what has happened, of course, is that the UWI has for quite a long time been moving towards what would be called a dual mode operation at the university, having both online as well as face-to-face, as well as blended, which is a combination of both programming. The UWI Open Campus, of course, is a campus that primarily has online students. We currently have over 7,000 students across the region studying fully online. The university's strategic plan, which started in 2017 to 2022, had this movement to an online platform, not just for our local students, but also for the global environment as a major thrust. And what has happened is that the COVID-19 has accelerated that. And what we have done is to really put in place emergency measures to allow for the students who were studying face-to-face at what we call the physical campuses, the Mona campus, St. Augustine in Trinidad, and Cave Hill in Barbados, for them to be able to complete the academic year through a technologically enabled environment. And I put it that way because we use online in a sort of very broad way when there are very many definitions of online learning, and there's a continuum of online learning that is synchronous, like what we're doing now,
right,
talking to each other in real time, and right to the other end of the continuum where students are able to interact with an online course with very little synchronous involvement, where they're, they have an asynchronous relationship.
So what new techniques have been adopted? Sorry,
repeat for me.
Well, before we jump to that, just hold on to that question, Leanne. I want to ask Gordon, because I know, Gordon, you are also through your company making...
Sorry, I'm sorry, I'm not hearing the question.
Okay, I just asked you, Dr. Longsworth, to hold just a minute. Leanne had asked you a question about the new techniques that you are using, but I wanted to bring Gordon into the conversation and to ask him what is happening from his perspective and from his company as it relates to reaching out to students who are trying to ensure that their education is not too badly disrupted.
Thank you for having me, Nadine. So, I mean, it depends on how you look at this particular situation, right? At the end of the day, there's a multiplicity of opportunities for us to just be on a forward thrust in terms of looking at the future of education in Jamaica and the region, but also grappling with the fact that there are issues that have been unresolved from many different angles. So you could talk about from the telecoms perspective, where they have not, for whatever reason, enveloped the island to facilitate connectivity in some instances. And in other instances, there is connectivity, but it's spotty, and it simply can't facilitate the things that we're doing right now on this particular call, which is a video call, right? Doctor spoke about the fact that you talk about synchronous learning. At the end of the day, you can't have that if you don't have access to the internet. That's one end. on the other end, it's the ability to use the technologies that are available, right? Sometimes the technologies are there, they're present, but training is an issue. We operate and have operated at the primary level in terms of focusing on primary level education in Jamaica for the last 8 years. And you found instances of students struggling to use a mouse, right? Even from the schooling perspective, we need to take a look at the curriculum that is being taught in schools, because in some instances we're still teaching kids about floppy disks and CD-ROM drives, and it's not that these things are not valuable, but if you look at the situation we're in now, people are trying as best as they can to catch up as quickly as possible to deal with the situation that we're currently faced with.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, so Dr. Longsworth, I had asked you previously, what new techniques have been adopted? Doc, are you hearing us?
Not hearing anybody
No,
again.
she's not
No,
hearing.
not hearing again.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, all right. So, yeah.
Gordon, back to what you were discussing. So you said you're focusing on the primary level. Has COVID...
If I may, I hope the audience can hear us.
No, we're hearing you.
We're hearing you.
We're hearing you. It's just that sometimes you're not hearing us, but they're working at it in our control room. So as soon as you are able to hear us, can you hear us now?
Yes,
Yeah, we can hear you.
Okay,
Okay,
so you can answer Leanne's question.
Yes, I was asking Doc, what new techniques have been adopted?
Yes, well, as I mentioned, this has been an emergency, but the Open Campus had been testing over the last 10 years. We have been really using a platform that has worked quite well for our students at the university level. So we have trained in 3 weeks. In 2 weeks, we trained over almost 1,000 lecturers across the region from the Mona, St. Augustine and Cave Hill campuses in how to deliver a class online, in how to develop materials for online usage within the systems that the university already has. So the university has a core of systems, but many of our lecturers were not that familiar with them, and also many of our students. And as Mr. Swavey has said, the important thing is training, training, training.
So will the students be trained as well? Will they have a crash course in terms of how to use the different technology? Yeah, okay.
Yes, what we did was we prepared what you would call a crash course, but it was all online, facilitated by the Open Campus's staff, and we trained these lecturers in the system, in the techniques. How do you conduct a class online? How do you answer students' questions online? And that has been very, very successful.
Okay, Gordon, one of the things you spoke to just now is the issue of connectivity, and I'll ask Dr. Longsworth to address it after you talk. But this whole issue of the digital divide that COVID-19 is revealing, and how socioeconomically generated that divide is. And that's, in your assessment, how many students you think will not get the opportunity to connect enough so that they can substantially, or what proportion of our student body, so that they can substantially continue their education? Gordon?
Sorry, was that for me first?
No, I had actually asked Gordon.
I thought that was for him first.
I don't think he's hearing us, but you can take it.
Yes.
Yes, well, we are very aware of that. And in fact, one of the things that the Open Campus did was to ensure that we had small sites across the region. And in Jamaica, we have 11 in the key parish capitals to provide support for students who did not have access at home. Now, of course, everyone is at home, and that does create a divide. The university is very, very concerned about the inequities that this move could cause. And so one of the things that we have been doing on several fronts is, I know certainly the principal of the Mona campus has been working really hard with the government to try and get devices for the students. And those devices will be distributed throughout the country. We've also been working with the service providers. As Mr. Swaby says, connectivity is another big issue. But the key thing is that mobile usage. So everybody almost in Jamaica has a mobile phone. So the focus has to be how to use the mobile phone for learning. And a student would have access to a data plan that would definitely give them access to their courses
but
and
Dr.
to
Longsworth,
and to their lectures. But we do want to collaborate, and the service providers have indicated their support for zero rating of the students' access once they have a data plan. But yes, it is a major problem, and it is one that we all have to work together on. Otherwise, we will find that it does create a digital divide that will affect students who do not have the economic wherewithal to access the internet.
Okay, Doc, I have a question for you next, but let's just see if Gordon is still
I
with
just
us.
wanted to add that, again, just looking at it from a broader perspective, if you think about the issues, one of the largest issues and maybe the hardest one to solve, but not impossible to solve, is connectivity, right? Of course, there are other issues. So, the device and so it's the device and having a device that can access the internet. Dr. Longsworth, you made a great point about, many Jamaicans having access to a smartphone. But if you think about active learning, online learning, so say video classes, it's in my opinion, not necessarily suited to facilitate that. But when you talk about asynchronous learning, I think from a mobile phone perspective, it better facilitates that. So students being able to go on and see course content, to watch videos that are recorded by their lecturers. I think from that perspective, there's value there. In terms of sorting the connectivity issue in the short term, I think that community access points are going to play a key role in solving that problem versus trying to focus on it from an individual perspective. Because if you think about the socioeconomic circumstances of many Jamaicans, they may not be able to, despite their best efforts, afford internet in their homes. So I think that is going to play a key role. Unfortunately, it's not as easy to execute right now during COVID, but there is life beyond COVID, and we have to. I think this is a good opportunity to, push or articulate the importance of these solutions.
All right. So, Dr. Longsworth, Nadine and I were speaking earlier before we were connected to you both, and as Gordon
lost
has
them again.
Well, let's continue the conversation, Gordon. What you said about life beyond COVID, I think that's something we really need to focus on. We have a window of opportunity now to really prepare our population for the new world. I think we were already getting a little bit behind what was happening in the developed world and some of the developing countries. So now we have an opportunity to plan and to really put things in place so that our young people can have access. And that's the key thing, access. And the good, the positive thing about online learning is that once all of the ducks are in a row, then you're talking about mass access to education without the difficulties, let's say, of transportation, having to leave home to come into Kingston or Montego Bay to live on a campus or something like that. So, and then for our primary and secondary students, access to the information that is out there that will really open their eyes to a whole new world. So I think if we look at the silver lining, that the education post-COVID is going to be quite different, but we have a chance to prepare for it now.
I hope
can you hear us?
Can you hear us now?
Can you both hear us?
Oh, sorry, we hearing you again?
Can you hear us now? Can you hear us?
Hello?
Can you hear? Testing.
Well,
hello?
but we want to thank.
I just wanted to respond to a point that you had made earlier too, which I'm very much gung-ho on, which is blended learning. I think that we've proven now that even with any little hitches that have happened, I think blended learning is a good approach to the future of education in Jamaica. I'm certainly not advocating that we get rid of traditional classrooms, but I do think that there is room for the blended approach where it's part online, part, e-learning and part traditional. And there's so many benefits to that. At the end of the day, there's no need for a child to be, or even an adult to be commuting from their home in Portmore, to the UWI Mona campus, or to their primary school, or to their prep school, or to their high school. I think that now is the time for us to think about disrupting disrupting it in a positive way.
All right.
The status quo, what has obtained for the last 100 plus, even longer years.
Thank you both.
I think that now is the time for us to start having these conversations, and I'm happy that we are having the conversation now.
Thank you both very much. I hope you're hearing my thank you. After Gordon just plumb put me out of a job as a student affairs professional, Gordon, I rely on people coming to campus.
Well, you're multi-talented. You'll have many other jobs.
I have to reorient my skills. But thank you both very much.
I'm not putting you out of a job at all. It's a little bit clear. I'm saying we can have both.
Thank you both very much.
More CVM Live, including lifestyle and entertainment, when we return. Stay with us.